啲啊。再高啲啊，係啊，再高啲啊，咁咯，係咯。OK，多謝。有，这上面有笔的，黑色、绿色的黑字。这。这里有很多笔。就蓝色的那个，你是用的。蓝色的。
你也很像。
Really? I don't think so.
就唔使喐噶啦嘛，固定佢。
Dear colleague, dear colleague, I'm very happy to chair this talk. The talk was will be done by Tong Xi. He is very famous in math education community. I know him many years ago. He gave a talk at the older campus 10 years ago. I invited by Dr. Jiang. I remember. And he do a very good job. Also have a very famous team in the New Wind team. I think it's play important role, like coordinate the math educator, like David Todd, David Clark, also like your Alan Bishop, also important figure in the math educator and community. So I'm very happy to have a chance to chair this talk. it's better to give the time to the 蛇尾通信。
Thank you. Thanks, Laozi. For the recording purpose, do I need to speak into the mic or can I speak like this?
The mic is better.
Better?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's better. Okay. So, in that case, I'll speak on the mic. Thanks for the introduction. It is very good to be back in this campus. The campus has become newer, has become younger, and the people in front of me are all now much younger than me. So it's, times have changed. But thanks for the invitation, Professor Kwan. So I'm going to talk about this topic today because I am thinking of using this opportunity to interact with the researchers here. So in other words, I am not reporting on any research, but instead I am going to use this opportunity to discuss and to share the notion of well-being in the aspect of mathematics education, what it means in the West, and also sharing a little bit about my own discomfort. I feel uncomfortable about the Western conceptions of well-being in the arena of mathematics education. So I thought the best way to get to understand this a little bit more is to interact with scholars, researchers, and colleagues in East Asia itself. So, as I said to some of my colleagues just now, this well-being now is a very interesting word because where I come from in Australia, if you want to get research funding, there are two magic words. If you use these two magic words, any of the two magic words, you will get funding. One is AI. Okay, so as long as the research talks about AI, there's a high chance of you getting the research grant. Another one is well-being. In math education or in any other forms of discipline research. So well-being is very much talked about in research, in the community, and also by the government. In fact, if you just Google for that, in the latest Victorian government's mathematics position statement, it is highlighted as a way of countering mathematics anxiety, which is a big issue in the Western countries. So I'm going to talk about well-being in mathematics education, and in that sense, because I talked about East Asia or East Asian classrooms, I think it is it's good for me to just define what these East Asian classrooms refer to. So basically, I will be referring to examples from the 6 jurisdictions, namely the 2nd largest economy in the world, the 4th largest economy in the world, so namely China and Japan, plus the 4 Asian tigers, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, and Singapore. And reason being that these 6 mathematics education systems have been, as you know, dominating both teams and PISA nearly ever since the introduction of these assessments in 2000. But having said that, I also want to emphasize the positions of Vietnam and Macau. Increasingly, as I said to our colleagues here just now, increasingly in the Western literature, when we think about East Asian mathematics education system, Vietnam is being talked about, being discussed as part of the East Asian community, and so is Macau. Partly because of the very quickly increased performance in both PISA and our teams, but also because of the similar cultures that Macau and Vietnam shares with the 6 jurisdictions. So basically, these are the East Asian places, even though geographically as you know, Singapore is not in East Asia, and geographically there are other countries which are geographically in East Asia but it's not included in the talk. But basic notion of what you're talking about well-being is mass anxiety. Mass anxiety has been an issue in the Western countries, and I think increasingly in East Asia and in the rest of Asia as well. Even in PISA, in one of the earlier PISAs, there have been an investigation of how mass anxiety and performance might be correlated, and we can see a negative correlation between mass anxiety and performance. So I will not go into the details of what mass anxiety is. We know that there are various forms of it, but this is a bit of the outlier. These are the regions. These are 6 regions, 6 jurisdictions, 6 systems, which technically performs very well. So along the vertical axis, you have the performance, high performance above the OECD average, but at the same time also the anxiety indicators are also above the OECD average. So I have been wondering why. What does this mean? And what does this mean for all the things that we know from the Western literature? Why does it seem to work? What does it seem to apply in East Asia? And of course, you can say, what's the point of doing this? This is the theoretical investigation, but I'll talk about the practical implications later. So, and mass anxiety is so important that it is one of the 5 key elements of the position statement that where I am in Victoria, which is a state of Australia, where Melbourne is. The state government just published 5 key points which underlies its commitment and its approach to mathematics education in schools. This document is freely available online, so if you just Google Victoria Maths Position Statement, you can actually see. But I just want to emphasize that this is the first time that the mass anxiety finds its way into these bullet points. Previously, it's all about cognitive aspects, but mass anxiety is really something that is being of importance. And then, of course, you can read about the details. So taking care of students' well-being has been important in where I come from, in my part of the world, partly because that a few of us believe that it's more proactive than interventions. Now, what we mean is this: we have mass anxiety, and with mass anxiety, we know that there have been interventions. There are ways in which we can try to reduce the mass anxiety of students who are affected by it. So there are interventions by psychologists, interventions by counselors. But to me, I find that interventions is coming a bit too late. If we can avoid mass anxiety from happening in the first instance, we can save a lot of money, a lot of agony, a lot of sadness and bitterness over the introduction of interventions. And of course, some parents would like their children to be subjected to interventions. And not to mention also that interventions are not always 100% effective. So therefore, if we can take care of the students' well-being in mass education, then it is a more proactive approach than to wait for the mass anxiety to kick in, to take place. Another reason why students' well-being is increasingly important in Australia is that it is a very significant factor after the COVID restrictions. So Victoria, where I come from, we experienced the world's 2nd longest period of stay-at-home restrictions. So and as a result, there are a lot of children who are still, to this day, still suffering from the effects of being kept at home, the effects of not having face-to-face interactions with their friends, with their colleagues, with their peers rather, and there are behavioral implications, so on and so forth. Also in research, there has been a lot of studies, not in mass education necessarily, but in psychology, where students' well-being actually predicts adult well-being. And this is important in Western countries because the depression rate of adults in Australia is very high. Depression, suicide rates is very high. And of course, then another reason why I think taking care of students' well-being is that if we can take care of students' well-being in maths learning, and given that maths is a subject that everyone studies, then we are also taking care of the overall well-being. We are also taking care of the development of adult well-being in maths, in education, and in general. And this will contribute to vibrant citizenship. Citizens who are positive about life, who is hopeful about the future. And this has become very important after the Cold War. And I think some of you, in fact, most of you are so young that you might not experience the end of the Cold War, but I think with the end of the Cold War and the coming of the Berlin Wall, one lesson which communist Russia learned was that one of the factors that led to a decreased importance and emphasis on the communism in Russia, the Russian model against the US model, is the citizens in Russia was not as vibrant as those in the West. So that was a lesson. Now, whether that is true or not, but I think a lot of countries have now since recognized the importance of vibrant citizenship, whatever the government system, whether it is in the West or elsewhere. Vibrant citizenship is a very important one to keep people happy, to keep people hopeful and positive. And for these reasons, governments, such as the Australian government, is investing a lot of money in this aspect. But of course, when we think of well-being, for mass education, traditionally there are two models. And I will talk about these two models, and I will also talk about how these two models seem to be quite at odds with how we might understand well-being in the East Asian situation. The first model was developed in 2010s, in the early 2010s, by a group of people. My mentor, Alan Bishop, my other mentor, Phil Clarkson, and myself. It was purely conceptual. There was no data. And at that time, I was a very young PhD student. And my development as a PhD student was that these are the full professors, these are the old professors. Whatever they say is the truth. So no need to collect data. So whatever they say, and in fact it's interesting because when it was presented in AERA in America, it became one of the most popularly cited paper in that group. So it was presented as a conceptual exercise. I'll talk a little bit about it, and then of course in more recent times there is this lady called Julia who conceptualized well-being as well. So the Clarkson model was this, and I think I can just take two parts of the writing to just emphasize what is emphasized in the Clarkson's model of MWB, which stands for mathematical well-being. Now I must say in that early stage in 2010, well-being was never mentioned in mass education. Nobody talked about it, and it was also not discussed a lot in the society. So I must say that professors like Alan Bishop have that foresight to be able to predict the importance of that. So the first one is the recognition that experienced teachers and people like us, we probably understand from experience that for many students, as they continue to engage with math learning, as they grow older, the sense of well-being diminishes. They start to disengage. They start to ask the questions why we need to learn calculus and so on and so forth. So the sense of well-being, about the comfort with math learning, they start to ask questions about why we have to learn these maths, is increasingly being closed. Although well-being was never explicitly defined by Clarkson and Bishop, this paragraph here sort of gives us an indication of what they mean. For them, well-being are the values that are important to the formation of an understanding of subject areas, whether it's math, science, or any other subject. And it will guide the students and scholars in how they should act and think if they are to become practitioners at a deeper level of the subject. And this sentence is an elaboration. Students might be able to answer test items correctly, through exercise, through rote. However, unless they know what the values of these exercise or these questions are, they may have difficulty understanding the deep structure, the nuances and understandings that come with being a mathematician, a geographer, a statistician, a scientist or linguist. So in other words, what they are trying to say at the early stages is that a deeper understanding and appreciation of mathematics correlates with an increased feeling of well-being. So if you are able to understand why the learning of statistics is important, how it can be applied in daily life, then our well-being as a learner, as a student, with respect to math application, is being developed at the same time. So you feel comfortable with math. You feel comfortable about why we study, why we need to study, why we need to understand deeper understandings of math, and not just to be able to do well in tests and exams. So that was their conception of well-being. Now, I must admit at the time I was a very young researcher, so we discussed over many rounds of coffee. But there was no, for some reason, we sort of agreed on this framework. Now, this framework was expressed in the form of a 5-stage development. As you can see from this 5-stage development of well-being, a child will start with an awareness of, oh, there's such a thing called mathematics in the world. There's such a thing where there are numbers that we can count or we can visualize in the world. So there is this awareness and acceptance of mathematical activity, that awareness, but not much more feelings, not much more sense of affinity to it. But as a child progresses to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and stage 5, at the end of this stage 5 continuum, the child becomes competent, but also independently competent and confident in doing the maths. So it's not just being aware that there's such a thing called numbers. It's not just being aware that there's such a thing called lines and curves, but that they are confident enough to be able to do things with it. They are confident enough to use that knowledge to understand the world around them, to interpret the world around them, to make decisions with the mathematical knowledge and understandings. So it is a progression, it was a continuum. The stages were not meant to be discrete. So in other words, you can be currently between stage 2 and 3, can be at stage 2.5 or 2.6. But the 5 stages were used just to indicate the deepening level of feeling comfortable, feeling accepting, and feeling at home with mathematics. So that was the construction at the time. Now, I must say that after the AERA presentation in 2010, in New Orleans, nothing happened after that. In a way, that's important. I mean, if you think about COVID-19, for example, COVID-19, I think the world, we would have many more people dying if there was no basic research done on the vaccination much earlier. A Harvard team developed the vaccine, mRNA, but it was left aside. Nothing much was taking place after that because it was seen by the medical world to be expensive. But when COVID-19 struck and the world was scrambling around to look for a way of controlling the virus, that technology, the basic work that was done by the technology saved the human civilization very precious 6 or 7 months or even 1 year. So, of course, this is not as life-saving as the mRNA, but it was left aside until about 10 years later, when Julia came along. But the features were there. People, I think, we came in touch with people around the world who was interested in the notion of mass well-being. And I think it's important at that time for people to understand that it is deepened. MWB, mass well-being, is deepened as a learner develops from stage 1, when they're just being aware and doing the maths, to stage 5, when they start to appreciate the importance of mathematics. And I think every one of us here will be in stage 4 or stage 5, if not stage 4.9. Definitely. Otherwise, we'll be doing mass education related research. And the other thing is that in that construction and conception, mass well-being is being developed on an ongoing basis. In other words, as a child goes through primary schooling, secondary schooling, the mass well-being is actually keep deepening, keep developing. At some stage, it may stagnate for a while. At some stages, it may develop slower, but it was seen to be, it was actually regarded as a developmental model. And we need to take this into account when we compare this with Julia's conception. Now, Julia came along in 2020, early 2020, when, of course, COVID-19 struck, and well-being became very popularly mentioned in the public domain, and we started thinking about how our students are affected. So she came along, and she was a bit of history is important. She was an education psychologist by training. So she's a psychologist by training, and I did ask her to join my team, and she got a scholarship after that to do a research on mathematical well-being. So this was actually developed by her as part of her PhD thesis, and she's now developing and growing it. Now, her idea came from these two main fields. I'll talk about Tiberius first. Tiberius is a philosopher based in an American university. And for Tiberius, her contention and belief is that well-being is a function of values. So this is a value fulfillment theory. So according to, what's her first name, Tiberius? I forgot her first name. So according to Tiberius, she sees well-being as a function of the extent to which values are fulfilled. So I'll give you an example. If I value, let's say, if I value coffee, right? Coffee is very important to me. If I have a chance to fulfill that valuing, I feel good. In other words, if I have a chance to drink coffee, if I have a chance to go out with friends to have coffee every day, my well-being is supported. However, if I don't get a chance to drink coffee, then my valuing is not fulfilled for that day or for the month, and then therefore the well-being is affected. It may not be decreased, but at least it's stagnated. So that's the theory, that well-being is a function of the extent to which the things that you value, and of course in this instance in maths education, is actually fulfilled. So in maths education, as a teacher, if you value group, let's say group discussion, but your government tells you, I can say that. If a government tells you that group discussion is not important or not to be encouraged, then I think as a teacher, professionally, your well-being as a teacher, in terms of pedagogy, will be affected as well. And I think that explains why there is quite a bit of hesitation and resistance in some cultures about certain pedagogical approaches. Julia also believes that in her understanding of well-being, whether it's mathematical well-being or scientific well-being or linguistic well-being, well-being is about feeling good and functioning well. She bridges both traditions of well-being in the same concept, because according to, historically, well-being is either feeling good or functioning well. And in fact, one of my current PhD students is actually questioning if it is possible to be feeling good and functioning well at the same time, or whether they are actually opposites of each other. So, but according to Julia, having a sense of well-being that you feel good about yourselves. Now, feeling good does not mean feeling happy. Need not be. Of course, if you're happy, that is also part of feeling good. But feeling good can also be, sometimes, for example, I have been spending 5 weeks trying to solve this question, trying to disprove this theorem, and I've done it. I feel good now. Okay, so it can be a satisfaction, it can be a sense of accomplishment. Functioning well does not mean that you must be scoring full marks in exams. Functioning well is subjective. As long as you think that you're functioning well in maths learning or maths teaching, then it counts. And that is why in psychology, well-being is often accompanied by the adjective subjective well-being. So the conditions that make you feel good and that make you feel that you're functioning well may be different from the conditions that another person is experiencing. So, and that makes the assessment very hard. And that has always been an issue with well-being. So her belief is that mathematical well-being is when the child is feeling good about their maths learning and also functioning well in the maths learning at the same time. So this is where she's coming from, and her PhD study, which has now gone international in terms of recognition, is that there are 7 factors, or in her own words, 7 values that need to be fulfilled, because remember, she subscribes to the value fulfillment theory. So these are the 7 values that need to come to be fulfilled for a child to experience positive mathematical well-being. Cognition. So a child needs, so cognition is important, that's why it's a value. It is important. A child needs to be able to feel that he or she is learning the skills, understanding the knowledge, so on and so forth. So these are cognitive aspects. Engagement is important. As you can, I think we can understand, if a child feels that they are not engaged with the teacher, not engaged with a lesson, well-being suffers. So well-being is actually correlated with the extent to which the child feels engaged with the learning process. This word is meaning. Actually, it's like well-being is the extent to which a child or student feel that learning maths is meaningful. That this, what I'm learning now, this topic, has its own meaning, and therefore I feel satisfied with that sense of experience. So, of course, that can also refer to real-world applications and so on and so forth. The other one is perseverance, and I think this is quite understandable. If you are able to experience, apply and experience and exercise perseverance, your sense of well-being actually improves. You know that you persevere, you have done well. You may not have gotten the right answer, but you're nearly there. And you feel good about yourself, so your well-being is boosted as a result. Positive emotions, that's quite understandable. Happy, feeling happy, feeling proud, feeling emotionally optimistic about the best learning contributes to well-being. Relationships. For some reason, she put relationships up here amongst all, and that reason is because her data from New Zealand, from the Pacific Islands, from Australia, from China, has indicated that relationship is the most important attributes among the 7. So students need to feel that they are they have a positive relationship with the peers, with the teachers, with the parents, in order for the well-being to be established. On the other hand, if they find that the relationship with the friends, with the parents, with the teachers, or even with the principal is negative or is affected, then the well-being with regards to maths learning is affected as well. And last but not least, accomplishment. Of course, if you accomplish, you do well, you feel good. You feel good that you're functioning well, so you're feeling good and functioning well coming to play. So these are the 7 factors, and at least according to Julia, she finds that these 7 factors are culturally neutral. In other words, they apply across cultures. She has data from, I believe, more than 20,000 students, and these 7 factors came out to be the most crucial and the most important. The features, and some of at least one of these 2 features is different from the Clarkson model, is that Julia's model pays attention not only to happiness and a sense of positive emotions across a period in time, but it also pays attention also to moment to moment happiness. So it's about, as a teacher, trying to optimize the opportunity of a child to feel happy as often as they can, to feel satisfied as often as they can, to experience the positive emotions as much as they can. Her study suggests the existence of an endpoint. In other words, if you have those 7 attributes and 7 values, the well-being is there, done. Job finished. I mean, you know, the rest is just to maintain that. And that's different from the Clarkson model, where well-being is always a developmental business. And it might also be different from the East Asian conception of well-being as well. So this is where the but comes in. But we know from media, and of course, notwithstanding that media sometimes do exaggerate the facts, but there is at least quite a lot of media that emphasize the high depression, the high negative feelings that students in East Asia experience with mass learning. Now, it may be an exaggeration, and I must also say that there are also students experiencing depression and mass anxiety in the Western world as well. So it happens everywhere. However, the interesting thing is, despite these incidents, now I am not talking about whether it's higher or lower in East Asia, despite these incidents, our students in East Asia continues to do well in maths. So, you know, it's sort of a bit of a paradox against this line that we saw earlier. So, what is happening here? You know, what do they look like? A group of outliers, and these outliers share quite the same features, cultural features, and what are these features as well? So this is where I started to explore, and I don't think I have the answer. But maybe I'll walk out this room today having the answer from a contribution. So let me stimulate a bit of a discussion on this, and then of course I'm not saying that this will always be true. But you may ask, why am I spending time thinking about this? It can be a theoretical exercise, thinking about it. But I think on a practical sense, on a practical aspect, I think this is important because if there are intervening variables that can disrupt the positive relationship between well-being and performance, or the negative relationship between anxiety and performance, then perhaps the Western countries or countries which are an education system which are not in the East Asian jurisdictions can actually learn to apply and to consider applying with their students in their respective places, especially in view of the fact that interventions are expensive, not always effective, and for Asian families sometimes it is something that's not desirable. I mean, sometimes parents feel ashamed or embarrassed that the children are undergoing through interventions and they may not give the permission for the school to go ahead with the process. So I think at a practical level, if we can understand this paradox, it can be quite useful to some students, especially outside East Asia. So this is why I'm spending time doing this in the last few weeks. So, as I said to some of my colleagues just now, I started to ask myself, what is well-being, in East Asia? And in the Chinese language, some people say that well-being is 幸福感, quite popular. But at the same time, Chinese scholars who say that it is 幸福感 will be quick to tell me that it is not exactly the Western conception of well-being. But so far, my friends have not been able to explain to me where the difference is. But they feel that it's not exactly the same interpretation. The Japanese have those two words there, which I cannot pronounce, but in in the Chinese character, no, in fact, this is the Japanese pronunciation, and in the Japanese they write it this way, 幸福 or 福子. And in fact, these are the two very popularly used terms in China as well. If they're not talking about 幸福, but they talk about 福子. Yet at the same time, my friends in Japan tell me that this is close, but not exactly well-being as the way that Clarkson and Julia Hill's model indicates. My Korean friends will tell me that Annyeong is close to well-being, but Korean language does not have a word for well-being, as if that concept that we understand in the West does not exist. And they even have a loan word. In other words, they have a word called well-being in Korean. The pronunciation is similar to well-being in the Western, in the English language. But that is because it's a loan word that they try to use to represent the Western conception of well-being in the absence of a term in the Korean language that describes what it is. So it is an indication that there is no such conception in these three languages. And these three languages happen to be, of course, the dominant languages of the 6 East Asian jurisdictions. So it looks like well-being as we understand it in the West might mean differently in East Asia. But what is the difference and what does it mean? So, so this is what one of my Korean friends wrote to me. She said that it is a condition. So from her experience and understanding in the Korean culture, it is a condition in which our mind and body are at ease. In other words, not stressed. Our abilities are fully utilized, which is understandable. No, if we experience well-being, we do well. We are very optimal in our functions, and we maintain positive social relationships. While the first two parts are quite, in a way, understandable, what actually stood out for me is this last part, the maintenance of positive social relationships, which I don't think neither the Clarkson model well, maybe the Julia model talks about relationships, but not so much about social, but more of that peer-to-peer and with teachers and with parents. So, so that stood out for me. And then I came across a recent Japanese study on the well-being diary in Japan. So the data was collected by getting the students to write a well-being diary at fixed intervals. And the question in the well-being diary is to ask the students, or the children, they are primary school children in Japan, to write about the sense of gratitude about what and to whom they are thankful, their feelings at the moment and the present situation they had. So again, this notion of the relationships, because it's about who are you being thankful for. And for me, my initial understanding of the Western conception of well-being is it's just me. I feel good. I'm functioning well. I'm feeling good and I'm functioning well. There was not that explicit reference to another person that I need to be thankful for. Someone who has helped me. Someone who has worked with me. So therefore, I started to wonder about the importance of these social relationships in the conception of well-being. And remember, when Julia had her data from China, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, and Australia, relationships stood out to be the most important as well. Not just in China, but also amongst the Pacific Islanders. In Fiji, for example, and in the Cook Islands. And these are communities which are relatively collectivistic. So these are communities which are quite similar to the communities that we are in. So therefore, I started to think about well-being, having the emphasis on relationships, and how the relationships provide a sense of feeling good. Because of positive relationships, because of productive relationships, we feel good about our lives, about our future, about the world around us. And therefore, that sense of feeling good contributes to well-being. And of course, as you know, feeling good and functioning well, the feeling good is coming out from the eudaimonic tradition of well-being, which those of you who studied educated psychology would have some understanding of. Well-being is also about being dynamic and always evolving. It's about the building of relationships. It's always evolving. There's no end to it. And this is quite similar to Clarkson's model. And have some of these words will give you this sense that if you want a sense of well-being, it doesn't come just because somebody gives you something good, just because a teacher makes you feel happy. Sometimes you require a period of perseverance, hardship, uncertainties, failure, or seemingly going nowhere. But it is always evolving. You're always working towards that result or that sense of achievement or accomplishment. And perhaps that is why I came across this in Chengdu a few weeks ago. If you look at this, if you want prosperity, nobody give it to you, not your parents, not the supernatural, but you have to fight for it. You have to work hard for it. So it's that sense of evolution, of getting that sense of achievement, accomplishment, and well-being. And of course, it is perhaps related to an understanding of how you should continue to self-cultivate. The notion of self-cultivation came to mind. It came to my mind, and I thought I'd just put it there just to see if it stimulates any response from everyone here. In other words, the self-cultivation leading to a degree of well-being. So it's not about whether you have or don't have well-being, but I think each and every one of us have a sense of well-being or maths teaching or maths research, but we have different degree. And that degree of well-being can actually be evolved. It's always evolving according to the experiences that you have, according to the relationships that you have, according to the success and the failures that you experience. So it's about degree of well-being rather than presence or absence. So these are the features, and I can't even, this may be seen as the features of well-being in East Asia. Please tell me if they don't make sense, because East Asia is such a huge place anyway, and there are cultural differences. But also, please let me know if you think that these are also already well understood in the Western conceptions. So first of all, well-being is referenced against the students' community. In other words, well-being is not just about myself. The definition of well-being is referenced against the community, how I feel about my maths learning in the community that I have. So it is always referenced against how my parents, how my teachers regard my progress. It's not about me thinking that, oh, I'm doing well, I have a sense of well-being. It needs not correlate with stress. In other words, you can be stressed and still have relatively positive well-being. And I know students who tell me, wow, I'm very stressed, so much homework. But I enjoy maths. I mean, in some people's minds, this look like quite, they are not complimentary. But when those students tell me that, and I hear that very often among Singapore students, very stressed, a lot of tuition after school. But I know that this is for my good, or I know that this is my duty, this is my responsibility. So therefore, I don't think it necessarily correlates with stress. It is for a degree of well-being, not whether that it's not an on-off thing whether you have or have not. I think everyone has a degree of well-being, and therefore it is ongoing. It never stops. I don't think you'll ever say that I have already achieved maximum well-being. Okay, I'll stop there. You will continue to look for things that make you joyful, things that make you feel accomplished, things that make you feel excited, things that make you feel, and even in mass education, things that make you feel challenged. You still look for challenging things because you know that you will experience success, possibly, and that will add to it well-being. You will never end there. And that's important. One local friend is he's from Australia. He was just telling me last week that when he visited Singapore, his colleagues in Singapore in NIE asked him, you coming from Australia, with your knowledge, tell me, what can Singapore learn from you? And he was very, very shocked at that question. Because he thought that he's going to Singapore to try to learn what and how or why the Singapore system is doing well. So he was astonished that the Singapore system or his peers in Singapore is trying to learn what is happening or what they can learn from the Australian system. And I said to him, this is perhaps one of the features, because we will always be continuing to think about how to be better. There's no end to our, there's no such thing as, oh, I have achieved, I have reached the end of my journey. And that is perhaps a feature of the sense of thinking there. So I started to think about who has been doing well-being research in East Asia. As our colleagues told me just now, not many. There is one group in Chengdu that is working on this. And Chengdu is a very interesting province. It has been voted, I believe, for the 8th consecutive year as the happiest city in China. I'm not sure, I think it is quite true. My personal experience is that it is the Melbourne of China. In the world. Many coffee shops. People seem to be quite relaxed. I'm not sure about the education system though. But there is a school district that is actually involved in the development of well-being in mass education. And they are doing this from every year. So they are doing a longitudinal study from grade 1, following through to now, the first group of students are now in grade 7 in secondary schools. And it's interesting for them to do that because, as you know, in China, they have the same math teacher. So this math teacher, for each of the classes, is able to assess and to regulate and to plan the teaching accordingly to develop the students' well-being along the way. Which I think in the Western world is hard when you have a change of math teacher every year. They use the word acronym mass education well-being instead of the Western notion of mathematical well-being to make the distinction. There is that use of the hyphen. Although I know that if you check on the dictionary will tell you these two actually has no difference. But the use of the hyphen is just to emphasize on the wellness of being. It's an emphasis on the wellness of being, and they have thrown in math education on mathematical just to emphasize that it's about math pedagogy. It's about through the teaching and learning of math, how do we optimize the students' sense of well-being so that they are happy, they are positive about the learning of new concepts, they are positive about the success at investigating things that they don't understand. So that is the study, and they also, the school district also come up with stages of the development of well-being, from noticing it, which is quite similar to the Clarkson model, where you get awareness of number, and through to flourishing, which is, of course, in psychology, it is the ultimate goal of any psychology intervention programs, that you want to see people flourishing in their education, in their maths learning, in their doing maths, or thriving in it. I can give you the slide so that you can have a look at these stages. So currently the group is looking at how these 5 stages, which developed from the earlier years of research, is now being applied to the grade ones. Now, what this meant was that this study started in the COVID years, when the students were in grade 3. So the data was being collected when the students were in grade 3, grade 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So they are resulting in this structure, and they are applying this model now onto the grade 1 students to see if it makes sense in the early years of education. So they have a slightly different conception, and their conception is also the sense of thinking about relationships, thinking about being learning well together, feeling good together. And I wonder if these words come to mind when we start thinking about those features, whether collectivism might be intervening variable. Is it a cultural characteristic of these East Asian jurisdictions, where students feel that they are learning best not just for themselves, but also for their family or for their community. So there's this sense of responsibility. So much so that if they do well, obviously they feel good, but even if they are not doing well, they feel that they need to do better, because they owe it to the community, to their family, to their parents, to continue trying. So they are not defeated. They don't feel defeated. They think that they will just have to continue looking for the best way forward. So their well-being is not affected because they see a sense of responsibility and purpose. So I wonder if that collectivism might be a cultural intervening variable that disrupt a positive relationship between well-being and performance. And maybe if I push that a little bit more, filial piety as well, which of course I'm using this word as it is used in the Confucian knowledge, where you have that sense of responsibility not just to your parents, but also to your seniors, to your elders, to your teachers, and to the country. And the extent to which filial piety might play a role in supporting the students' well-being, even if they are in situations which in the West might be seen to be a negative experience. I am not sure, but these are some of these ideas that came to mind when we start thinking about what has been observed in China and in Japan. So I'll stop here, really, because as I said, this is just to stimulate some discussions. You may want to reflect on your experiences as a teacher, as a student, or even as a parent, or as an auntie or an uncle to young students. So happy to get questions and comments.
Thank you very much.
I talk longer than I should, I think. Thank you.
It's time for the person. Welcome to give some questions. Yeah.
I think it's like an encyclopedia, really comprehensive, very interesting, I think. Of course, I think it's built on what mass educators have done earlier, because in the classical framework, So, yeah, by the way, Julia is the Daniel supervisor. What's the name? Julia?
Julia.
You? Daniel supervisor. How many?
No. Julia is, so I was a supervisor,
Yeah.
and she is now just starting work.
Oh, is it Julia here, right?
Julia.
Okay. So my question is, I just open for a second. So again, mass education will be, was there the English education will be, physical education will be. So all mass education is unique when you talk about the will be.
The quick answer is
science education will be.
the quick answer is no, not yet. And math education well-being has been researched because Julia came along and I said, why don't you do it? But however, the way when we write it in journal articles now is to emphasize that we are not saying that there's no such thing as linguistic well-being or scientific well-being. And in fact, Julia is now working on scientific well-being or science and education well-being. So she's actually crossing over to that. But the reason why we are emphasizing math education well-being is because math is a subject that most people, in fact all students, have to study. So if you can take care of the well-being, it's good because it benefits all students. Secondly, math anxiety is a very real problem. We don't hear of linguistic anxiety or geography anxiety. So in other words, apparently many children are very stressed. So that's why we want to do math.
I have two more questions. So you have well-being, but when you translate into Chinese, what's looks not very identical. I think well-being is a great in English, but if we find force like in Chinese, like force means 工会 like 工会 taking care of its members' well-being.
Yeah.
So that means during mid-August festivals, they give me some 月饼. So it's this kind of what you call well-being. But your well-being is more abstract, more philosophical. So translation is very difficult. So you have to understand English before you can really catch. Like well-being is a much more accurate word than Chinese words. You capture the same idea you use English to describe well-being. If you use Chinese to describe words, at least to many people, especially in mainland China, this is 工会 we take care 这个工会会员的 buy the 月饼 去旅游 summer vacation, we will also organize. So that's what. So maybe we 幸福感 might be better.
是的，中文的词语解释其实跟well-being不是一回事。
是一点好像不是一个。
就是。
That's why I also.
但他讲福利，他这里没有福利。
没有，
他讲的福祉，其实我们的福祉也是这样的。
他这个福利也包括一个同志福利。
Yeah, I agree. That's why.
幸福利福利。
它是指代表美满、祥和的
There's
生
no
活环境、稳定、安全的社会环境和宽松开放的政治环境。
这个太玄。
在读的这个古文的啦。
不是前
面代表的是实意为幸福、利益和福利，但是它后面又讲说代表出美满祥和的生活环境。
But in well-being here, you don't have 福利。福利 means give you 两个鸡蛋或者什么工会，你我可以抢的来，你无害。So, of course, that's related, but not identical.
But I think that's very true. I mean, both interpretations are true and important. As I said, these are words that are similar but not identical. They don't express the same meaning.
We maybe need to create a Chinese word to use this. I think I like the English term well-being. But if you say, I study 数学教学生的佛子 I don't think it's twice. I need to be
所以我们一般是讲幸福感。
幸福感。这是它是一个通俗感。
And that's why in the Chinese, I have three lines: Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. The Chinese is only 幸福感. Fuzi is the Japanese word for that. The important thing is that because there is no direct translation, it just impresses upon us that in these East Asian societies, we never have to consider to have a word to represent the same understanding. I think that's the
Because human being can feel like a feeling of happiness.
yeah.
That's but you now you use
Which is
the
not the
well-being. Okay. Last question.
Mm.
I think it's related to values in mass education, but the well-being and values are not the same.
You know.
You did a lot of study in value, well-being. Well-being also means appreciation of mass. Anyway, I think you are talking very helpful for me. So now I don't equate the value and well-being.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will ask a question later.
Thank you. And that's why the well-being is actually seen as with the value fulfillment theory. So there's a difference.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. So my question is, you mentioned 2 words for the keywords, like if you have AI and well-being. So per the 7 sub-dimensions of the mathematical well-being by Juliet, which dimension do you feel like generative AI or AI has bring much influence on this dimension currently?
Okay, so it depends on whether we're thinking about the well-being of students when they are studying AI, or are you referring to the well-being of the AI itself?
Like students learning in the AI supported environments, or teachers may use the AI to teach mathematics, and it might change students' mathematical well-being.
So let's have a look at the 7 factors.
And you could combine them together. Then a proposal.
Where are you from in this picture?
So from these 7, I think positive emotions will still be important. I think relationships will still be important. Relationships between the student and student as they work with the AI. Accomplishment is still important. You feel accomplished that you can give the correct prompt for the AI to give you the answer that you want. You need to have the knowledge and skills, which will, instead of best skills and knowledge, is AI skills and knowledge. I think this is still important. Engagement will still be important. It has to be meaningful. You need to persevere.
So
And
if we measure students' well-being, we need to develop a certain kind of skill to measure. So maybe British students' well-being is better than Chinese students?
That is why assessment is always hard, because it's subjective. It's subjective. So even if you ask them, do you feel accomplished? The British student may do less than what Professor Jiang have done,
Yeah.
but they can actually feel more accomplished than Professor Jiang. So it's subjective. So, but the beauty of going through this is to indicate that, and Julia will be very happy to hear this, is that if these 7 factors can actually remain to be relevant, even for AI well-being, then it means that these 7 factors are really quite invariable. She tried on, as I said, she's now working on scientific well-being, and she has found that these 7 factors remain to be relevant in the area of science education as well. So there is this chance that these 7 factors, which needs to be valued, that's where the values come in. You need to be able to value and fulfill this valuing of these 7 factors in order to feel, to experience the well-being. And it might just be applied to AI as well. So in your new research, you could try to verify.
So how well-being is reflected in Chinese and American textbooks? It's my probably international journal of STEM education. So how but the well-being, that's not easy. But I like the word well-being. I think this is kind of ultimate pursuit of mass educators for students' well-being.
I think happiness is a very general word.
Yeah. But happiness
in the Chinese community, happiness, 幸福感.
But happiness is more This one is more philosophical, more kind of, I think a very miseducation for students.
The interesting thing about happiness, just like stress, not related to stress, is that at least in East Asia, I find that students can feel not very happy, but still they feel very comfortable. The sense of well-being is still there. They feel comfortable with their learning, with their
The East is bigger than the West.
It is, yeah.
So you see, like government take care of the well-being of members of the society, of people. So you are talking about well-being is students' well-being during their schooling. But this is for their future well-being when they go to the society. I think it's great, but it's not so touchable. You could kind of
and it's hard to assess. It's hard
but
to assess.
there will be a way we figure it out.
Yeah.
We're just at an early stage of research.
So I think it's important if once we think that it's worthwhile to pursue, we can of course come up with an assessment strategy. And in fact, we may want to ask ourselves: is it always important to be able to assess, or should we just be happy to do our part as teachers to just keep developing?
But then, what's the evidence? You claim
That's why assessment is always important. People want to be able to give a score to say that at the start of the semester they are at this level. When they are leaving us at the end of the school year, they are at this level. We want to be able to show that the well-being is.
That's right. You see, James always say, without the data, it's just your personal opinion. So you didn't have data say, oh, this is students, they have better well-being under you are teaching. MIT maybe some students committed to suicide. This is not well-being.
Definitely not.
So there's a way to measure. We're not accurately, not.
Maybe you can measure, but we may not need to give a score. So, are you feeling much more happier now than 3 months ago?
Why? What's the evidence?
Yeah.
You're higher, or you keep having face more time. If some person almost keep a long face, you can see this person is not very happy. Yeah, you need to have certain kind of number to indicate, right? Yeah, otherwise why you claim you?
I think Professor Fan is describing a research study that he can
Yeah, but this is too complex.
It is. I must say that even at this stage, it is, as I said earlier, assessment is difficult. Of course, my Western colleagues will always respond by saying, we don't assess. It's very, very common to hear, you cannot fatten a pig by weighing it. So is it always important to assess?
You see, Macaulay right now.
There are the 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 dimensions for the well-being. Is it produced by the this theory of your theory
No, this 7 comes from the data that she collected in New Zealand, Australia, China, and Pacific Islands. So she has a questionnaire which is available from the Third Wave website, and from the questionnaire through factor analysis, she actually teased out these 7 factors. So if you're going to read into her work, just bear in mind that she talks about ultimate values and instrumental values, and this would be the ultimate values of which the instrumental values are served. So there is a bit of a psychological approach to how these 7 factors are teased out from the data.
If we do project, we started with 1 dimension, we try to measure it. Macaulay is #1 in equity, education equity. But that is measured.
It can be measured.
By evidence. Yes, that's right, there's evidence. Without the data, you cannot claim you are #1. So I think there's a way to match. Maybe not accurate, but indicators. So if this person is happy, smiling is an indicator of being happy. Yeah. And, sure.
How many items were included in the PISA students questionnaire for students' well-being? Yeah, they have their items for well-being.
But their well-being is very different from Julius, because PISA's definition of well-being is more of feeling happy. Doesn't have the functioning well. So whereas Julius' questionnaire has items that measure both as well. But I think Professor Fan's idea is very good. The next thing is for him to say that he will sponsor research into this.
We sponsor any kind of research. It's totally freedom.
Yeah, and nobody else has done it. If you do it, you'll be the first institution to do it with East Asian flavor.
Yeah, compare with Melbourne, so Melbourne is the project.
I think that the cultural difference should be very big, right?
And important.
Also important because in Chinese we believe 先苦后甜 bitter better later. But I think the West people didn't believe.
There's I think especially in the primary school, there's this belief that you should make the learning process happy one. We need to support them positively, give them the efficacy, the confidence to keep on learning.
Yeah.
So it's different approach.
Yeah. Very interesting. I think
You can do research.
I think it's very interesting about how about the teacher education. I think many teachers in some society, the teacher happiness is different.
Yeah, the Americans. I think the Americans. I think one team led by a researcher. His first name is Ty, T-Y-E. I forgot his last name. He's actually doing a research on teachers, mathematics teachers' well-being. Especially because in US and Australia, there are many teachers who are what we call out-of-field teachers. Teachers who are teaching maths, but who never were trained to teach maths. They can feel very insecure. They can feel very uncomfortable teaching maths. So their sense of well-being is also important.
Yeah. Some in China, many teachers will confident about this job, job happiness, and it's very different. In my house, teacher get contracts year after year, and the teacher feel not comfortable. At least they will have to reject the job very frequently. I think also important topic.
Yeah, of course. For teachers, it's related to teacher retention.
Yeah.
Appreciation is very high. It's a we think teachers will be.
It's important to maintain and to develop.
That's right. But for students also it's important. So students will have less anxiety, have more happiness to leaders who are more motivated, right? So I think that will be easy. You need to make it more tangible, more concrete.
More measurable. More measurable.
Now it's more philosophical, I think. It's very big. It's very big.
Talk about the textbook. I remember many years ago, I talk about the Hong Kong, how to change the textbook.
Yes.
Because most students, they are very difficult. We have a project about 没有眼泪的数学 no tear for the math, so the textbook can be easier.
Yeah, I think the textbook can play a role. Teachers can play a more important role.
Yeah.
Right? So teachers need to be nice. Talk nicely. over the recent years, also related to your work in very mass education, I look more at mass education from education's perspective. So mass educators are not just, math teachers are not just teaching math, they're also education. So it's not easy to, but you see, like students learn a lot of things, not just subject knowledge. They also learn like they need to be kind, to be friendly, to be cooperative with peers. Those cannot be learned by online. So physical school is actually kind of important. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you need to respect others, you need to wait for a turn to speak. So this is not a particular teacher who can take care. All teachers can take care. So this is quite interesting.
And of course, these are important life skills. And there are also life skills which are, there are also skills like this which are more mathematical. So, so in other words, as a teacher, you are not only teaching knowledge and skills, we are also teaching the competencies and the proficiencies.
Yes.
So competencies like understanding, problem solving, reasoning. As a math teacher, through our teaching of calculus or quadratic equations, we're also teaching them what is it like to be reasoning in maths. So it's important.
Attitude.
The attitude and the capabilities.
Yeah.
And they also effective.
And the effective focus.
Yeah, that sense.
And the effective means like honesty and
Yeah,
creativity.
honesty. So it's in 中国大陆讲的那个数 perfect range.
Which can apply to across all the subjects. And of course in maths, United States has 5, Australia has 4 competencies, which are the Australian curriculum expects all teachers to demonstrate their teaching through the teaching of maths.
Do you have questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I asked them one more. I think the slide they show is 2012 PISA data. Yeah, but because I noticed the UK now it's much better.
Yeah.
The UK, you look at the first one.
The problem is that those data was not measured after 2012.
Oh.
Because PISA measured different things in each cycle. And not to mention that it's 9 years before mathematics or numeracy is the focus again. So with every 3-year cycle, one cycle focus on maths, the next cycle focus on science, and the next cycle focus on literacy. So it takes a 9-year cycle before all these more important, more detailed questions about maths is being posted. So 2012 was the only time when they measured anxiety and results.
I see.
But too bad, OECD is the only one that has such a comprehensive comparison across so many countries.
Yeah. We have a nice background picture.
You will recognize this place.
Singapore.
In Singapore?
Yeah.
Not in Dubai? Oh. There are the Palm Island. But you see, you look at the United Kingdom, this is on average OECD. Recently, United Kingdom. Yeah, nearby.
在轴上面的第二个点。哦，对，在反面。
So now it's close to Finland. Yeah, this one Finland is much better, right?
So this is here.
Yeah.
Move up.
And Finland is here.
Yeah.
But I think England has progressed a lot.
Yes, that's right. Now better than Germany.
Yeah.
It's equivalent statistically to Finland. So now they say we don't need to learn from Finland because we are equivalent statistically. But for China, still not. Still significant difference.
A lot. Yeah. And I think for many of us, it's a very good question to go home and find out why do you think England has progressed since 2012?
Because they express the teaching. That's the government that say, look, I know the boss president.
A lot of money is going to that. Yeah.
He say, oh, we should use root learning. So great, like it. Yeah, interesting question. We need to figure out why we are having
England has progressed a lot.
Somehow attributed to Shanghai method, but I don't think there's a direction.
Okay, thanks very much, Professor. So it's really a really interesting talk. I would like to say, for the English definition to well-being and the Chinese definition to food, I'm still confusing about both definitions. So I have a few, questions. The first one I would like to ask is, do you think, in terms of learning outcome or whatever, so well-being is more close to an effective learning outcome or cognitive learning outcome?
If you ask Julia,
Yes.
she will say both, because remember she says well-being is about feeling good, that is effective,
Yeah.
and functioning well, which is cognitive. So she tries to bring in both.
Okay.
I am not sure whether it is possible, but it's an ideal. It's an ideal that is worth looking at. Yeah.
Yes. And I think thanks very much. I think we already discussed quite a lot. For my second question, I was also wondering how to merge, the well-being. And we already discussed. My third question is there any prototype for well-being, mathematics well-being? I mean, the ideal situation or status for well-being?
No.
So.
No.
So you need to come up with an operational
Yes.
definition.
So Julia's current work,
Yeah.
not that she has done this published, is to look at how teachers can actually operationalize it. How to, if a teacher knows that this student's well-being is weak in, let's say, relationships, while the other 6 factors are strong, how do you support the development of relationships? So she's looking at how the 7 factors.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
How we define or determine the students is weak in well-being? If we cannot merge, how we
How
define?
you can measure, right? Yeah.
Assess maybe.
So there is the most popular thing now is Likert scale, because it's subjective, so it's okay. Because it's Likert scale, so you ask a child through the
You have a questionnaire.
yeah, the questionnaire. So it's a Likert scale. So actually the child will indicate to what extent they are very, very satisfied or developed in that area or not. So a child can tell you that amongst all these things, relationship suffering. I'm having a lot of issues with parents' expectations, for example. So they'll put that in a Likert scale that indicates.
You can also observe.
We can also observe as a teacher.
There's a face.
Yeah.
Facial expression.
Teachers will always be able to tell. Yeah. We tend not to do that too explicitly because teachers, well, at least in some parts of the world, teachers don't want to be getting extra work. This is extra.
Yeah.
So we are trying to develop systems where we emphasize to them that there are things which you are already doing. Just like values, we always say to teachers, if you want to develop students' valuing of problem solving, we're not telling you to teach problem solving once a week. Through your daily experiences, you are already developing the problem solving. What we want you to do is to be more aware that you're doing it. Just like explicit teaching. A lot of teachers say, oh, I'm not doing explicit teaching, I don't like it. I'm sure every teacher does explicit teaching as some part of the introduction of the topic. You can't be doing inquiry and investigations all the while.
So now we are doing explicit teaching.
Precisely, a lot of the things that we do in our class, even in our pre-service teaching class, is explicit teaching as well.
That's a way not in the past.
In an efficient manner, and we want the children to just learn this basic knowledge, and then they take this basic knowledge and develop and grow, rather than start from everyone starting from square one. So that's the idea.
Maybe you can organize an international symposium or conference on this.
I'll leave Julia to do that. because I move on. I have this habit, and I think I know my students know. With every student, we do something new. For example, with Penelope, Caledonian person who's now in Monash, she does a research on values alignment. And then when she graduates with it, she takes it to.
Julia is working with you now.
Julia is in RMIT, so they are in different universities. They take this and they grow, and take on new students and develop a new topic with new students. So my research interests have now shifted to something else. But still within the values, within the value space, but it's more of different types of values.
That's
Okay.
very interesting. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe after 10 years, this will be like
Yeah.
highly visible as noticing skills.
Hopefully. Yeah, but I let them take it and grow and develop.
You might need to a group of researchers doing this thing. There are a lot of people researching noticing.
Yeah, noticing is yeah. So in fact, I know some of you know Ban Heng, for example. Choi Ban Heng is one. Of course, he's not the first person to do it, but I think he has developed it quite a lot in the Asian context. So we look at how actually noticing is values guided by values. Your values as a teacher determines what you notice. If I don't value problem solving, and if student also values problem solving, what we notice in the same class will be different. So what we value actually affects what we notice and pay attention to. So I think just regulating some of these values is important in that sense.
Really interesting.
关了以后就